Happy Sunday. How are you guys doing? It is Charlotte Cornegay coming live to you guys with another Forever Friends episode. Happy weekend. Hopefully, you guys have been enjoying your weekend so far. Let me introduce myself just in case there's someone on who's new. My name is Charlotte Cornegay. I am author, a recording artist, and creator of Interask Coaching and Forever Friends Academy. And this is my show, Forever Friends Academy, where we talk about all relationship topics. And my aim is to help people love to their fullest capacity. So, welcome. If you are looking to build relationships that last a lifetime, you've come to the right place. So, welcome, 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 welcome. If you want to check out any of my music, you can Google me or go to your favorite music platform of your choice and just type in Charla K, Sharla space K, and hopefully you'll like the music. Now I'm doing something a little bit different tonight, so you guys bear with me. I'm excited because I can now go live on TikTok. I don't know, they made some like new rules. So you guys bear with me because this will be something different tonight. All right. Hey Lady Upscale Entertainment, thank you for popping in. I literally just started, and tonight what we are talking about is actually I'm continuing a conversation from my last episode where I put out a quote, which is from the great, at least I believe he's great, the great late Dr. Miles Monroe. And the quote goes like this: God blesses your plans, not your desires. Again, I'll say that again. God blesses your plans, not your desires. And along with that quote, he also said that having a plan and executing it is the greatest expression of your faith. Let me say that again. Having a plan and executing it is the greatest expression of your faith. And so I definitely wanted to present it to you guys on my, on my show in relation to relationships because, you know, having a relationship, especially an intimate one and a romantic one, is a desirable thing for many people, right? And sometimes we can misunderstand our desire to be a plan for the relationship. So I wanted to introduce that to you guys tonight. So again, the quote for tonight, and welcome. I'm happy I got somebody on TikTok with me. Okay, guys. I am Charlotte Cornegay. This is my first time on with you guys. I always post my videos, but I never could go live, so I'm happy. Sorry, guys, for the on the other platforms who are watching. So thank you guys for coming in. Let me restate who I am for some of you guys who are new to the show. This is my show, Forever Friends Academy. I am a recording artist, a relationship coach. I created Interask Coaching and Forever Friends Academy, where I do group coaching. And this is my show, titled the same, Forever Friends Academy. What my aim is to help people build relationships that last a lifetime and help people love to their fullest capacity, not only to be and show up in all of who they are in the relationship, but also, right, authentically knowing who you are and owning it helps you show up in the world boldly and unapologetically. And so I like to introduce fundamental principles of relationships that help people, engage in all of the different areas of their relationships. So welcome. I'm excited. All right. So let me restate the quote for tonight. The quote for tonight is from the late, great Dr. Miles Monroe. And the quote goes like this: God blesses your plans, not your desires. And he also stated that having a plan and executing that plan is the greatest expression of your faith, which I think, man, he is so phenomenal in the way that he articulates things. Yeah. So anyway, I wanted to introduce it in regards to relationships because having a relationship for many people, not everyone, right, wants to be married or anything like that. There are some people who have dedicated their life to just, whether it's completely consecrated to God or maybe it's just not someone's passion, but for the majority, a lot of people, right, desire some kind of human connection, in-depth human connection in some form or fashion. And so because of that, it is a very desirable thing that we want. And oftentimes that desire can be misunderstood as a plan. So my question tonight, I have two questions for you guys tonight, and that'll probably that'll probably compound. That's one thing you'll know and recognize about me is that my friends, some of my family members like to call me Baby O, meaning like I have a lot of questions. And as a coach, I tend to, a lot of what I would say my superpower as a coach is helping people by asking them the right questions to help them come to their answers that they do have within them. So that two question thing might might compound, but for right now. So my first question to you is, one, how do you prepare to be in a relationship? And I would like to pose it like this. I don't know if you've ever heard of a quote, stay ready so you don't have to get ready, right? There's many different versions of it. And so I would like to ask it to you in that way. How do you stay ready to be in a relationship? Because I definitely think the things that you do to prepare to be in a relationship is the same thing that you have to do to sustain the relationship throughout. And you guys forgive me for those of you who are on TikTok. I'm new to this, okay? So I'm trying to still figure out how to do everything. So please be patient with me. But I am definitely looking out for the comments, and hopefully I will be able to restate them. I do have, for the folks who are on with me, definitely on the other platforms, I will share with you the link. You can come on and have a conversation. And you know what? TikTok, I'm going to try to give you guys the link too. Right now, I'm streaming on multiple platforms. So those of you who are on like YouTube or Instagram, I'm going to put the link for you guys. You can come on to actually have a conversation with me, all right? You might not want to type. So if you are camera ready and ready to come on the live, definitely do so. So I'm going to send that link to you guys, all right? But for the folks who are with me on TikTok, I'm going to try to read your answers in real time. So let me know. So again, the question for tonight, folks, is how do you prepare to be in a relationship? And I want to give you guys a scenario to kind of facilitate this conversation. All right, I put the link for you guys. So hopefully I get some callers coming into the show tonight. For those of you who are on the other platforms. But for those of you who are on TikTok, let me know what your thoughts are. Again, tonight's quote is, God blesses your plans, not your desires. And having a plan and executing it is the greatest expression of your faith. And again, I'm putting it in regards to this this live because, again, having a relationship is a desirable thing for many people. And oftentimes relationships fail because people mistake the desires that they have for a plan, right? So it's like, how do you have a plan for a relationship? So that's the kind of conversation that I want to have with you guys tonight. And the second question that I have for you guys, and then I'll throw the scenario out to let me know what your thoughts are, is I say all the time that asking the right questions can lead to the right answers, right? Or asking the right questions can help you formulate a plan, right? That'll help you fulfill your deepest desires, right? And more importantly, right, fulfill your purpose. So if you're on tonight, let me know a question or statement that you've either asked to yourself or someone asked you that changed or shifted your mindset, that either help you to be able to navigate relationships better or basically just shifted your mindset to shift the trajectory of your life, right? Because I think it's good, you know, many different people might come, hopefully, see this replay, might be on right now, and might be dealing with something, and whatever question you pose might help them. So I'll restate some of the questions that I did present on my last podcast. And you guys, hopefully, I get some answers coming in. And again, if you're on the other platforms, I did leave the link so that you guys can call in. Call me. Call me. All right. So, definitely the number one question that, and it really, well, yeah, it was a question, I should say. So, for those of you who have not, this is your first time coming into the show, I'm originally born in Jamaica, and my father passed away when I was 7 years old. Him and my mother were never married, and I came to America. She brought me to America, and so I didn't really get to really know him. The last time I was with him was when I was 3 years old, right? And so my mom, she couldn't raise me either because she was dealing with some, illnesses and things like that. And so, as any child who does not have the two fundamental people in their life to kind of glean from, to learn how it is, what love is, and all the essential things that, having a nuclear unit household can afford a child, I did not have. So, of course, I had definitely a lot of voids. And I just remember a moment, I think I was about to go into high school. And how you can kind of, there's things going on, but there's nothing going on, if that makes any sense. I don't know if anybody has ever experienced this where it doesn't seem like anything externally is going on, but you know that this moment is going to be a very pivotal moment for your life. So this was that moment for me. It was pivotal, and I was just really lying down in my bed in the dark, and literally on the left side, I could feel all of this kind of like toxicity, negativity from certain things that I had experienced, growing up early on in my childhood. And then on the right side, I can kind of feel only what I could describe at that moment as God's love and light. And literally, it was like you can choose either to continue, to kind of live out and reproduce some of the dysfunction that you've seen, or you can choose to, choose the light and love. And I chose the light and love, even though it was unfamiliar to me, even though honestly, because it's unfamiliar, it seemed to be more scary to me to go that route, right? Because it's like, what you can expect what to get versus something that's completely uncertain would bring about more, at least for me it did, resistance. Nonetheless, I chose that, and I remember literally in that instant just feeling, well, before the feeling of the flood of love coming my way, this statement came, and it was, if your parents were here to love you in the way that you think that they best could, where would they begin it from? And I heard it as clear as day from God, right? From God. And when I heard that statement, the freedom it afforded me was that I was able to relinquish the way that I wanted to receive love, which is through my mother and father, right? That's who I wanted to get it from. And that's not if you told anyone, if a child told anyone that, they would probably say, yeah, definitely. That's exactly what you're supposed to feel and do. However, that is not the cards that was dealt to me. So me holding on to that and blocking out any other way for God to express his love to me or show me what pure, authentic love is, then, right, I would not give myself the opportunity to welcome the other angels that God was bringing into my life. So I decided in that moment, I was like, okay, if they were here to love me in the way that I would want them to, or the best way that I think that I could internalize it and experience it, it would be coming from you, God. So you know what? What I really want is the source. What I really want is the love. And you know what? I leave myself open, So from that moment on, I said, okay, I'm going to leave myself open to not only be aware and be alert to see what angels God brings my way, and on top of that, I'm going to make sure that I embrace it and I wholeheartedly take it in and allow it to, right, grow me, transform me, etc. And so for me, that was like my ultimate first experience of what true love is. And after hearing that question and my response to the question of saying that I will relinquish wanting to, experience it from my mother and father, and I will look for it wherever you, whoever you present to me, God, I will look for it, and I will embrace it, and I will honor it, and I will be grateful for it. Once I did that, I could feel like every void, every empty, literally every internal struggle just kind of like disperse and fade away, and filled completely, with the undeniable love that God has. That if we are able to engage with people who are whole and healthy, or at least maybe even if they're not quote unquote completely whole, but are at least open to, hearing and reflecting that love, that, once you meet someone like that, you can kind of, engage with each other in that way. So that was definitely number one question for me. There's a lot of them and a lot of statements that I can think of that changed the trajectory of my life. So again, let me know what yours are. And for anybody new coming in, the question that I asked was, how do you prepare to be in a relationship? How do you stay ready? Right? Because I love that statement, get ready, or stay ready so you don't have to get ready. And I'm sure we can kind of dissect that when it comes to, you know, work. I'm a singer, so creatively, I know that the way that I would stay ready as a singer is to make sure you continue doing your vocal exercises, you continue practicing, and you don't wait for the gig to come. You don't wait for when it's a concert, but you do it continually, and that's how you stay ready. You stay on. But how do we do that when it comes to a relationship space, right? How do you prepare? How do you prepare? So I'm going to give you an example tonight, a scenario. Sometimes I put out scenarios in my episodes. So, we get to kind of like jump outside of ourselves and be the quote unquote coach, therapist, etc. So the scenario I'm going to throw out to you guys tonight, you guys let me know what you think about it. And maybe if you were that person, how would you, discern the situation, decipher, or what decision or choice would you make? So the scenario tonight is a gentleman who is in, how can I say it? I want to say, well, yeah, in the beginning stages. Well, I don't want to say. Let's say they've been kind of seeing and vetting each other and getting to know each other. I hate saying just vetting. Getting to know each other to see if there's a potential match between them. And they've been getting to know each other for a while. So probably about maybe a year. Let's give them a year, these two people in this scenario. They've been getting to know each other. The gentleman in the situation is definitely serious. He wants to date intentionally. He wants to definitely be married, and particularly this woman that he's dealing with, he feels like she can potentially be the one. However, he has had situations in the past where he felt like he could have navigated the relationships in a better way to have a better, fulfilling experience or outcome, clearly. And so he presents to the young lady that he is, having this friendship, evolving friendship with, and he presents to her that he wants to go to some kind of relationship coaching, right? And I don't want to say some kind of. This is actually some one that he knows of their, of course, as anybody would do, hopefully, due diligence to look into the person that you would want to, be your coach and guide you. So he knows this person, he's seen the evidence of their work, et cetera, et cetera. And so he's like, he feels like we've gotten to a certain space in our relationship thus far, but I feel like I want someone else to come in to see if there are things that we're missing, and to kind of guide us to a more elevated, right, version of our relationship. And so he does his due diligence. He reaches out to the coach, and then he presents it to the young woman that he's, courting and being in the relationship with. And there's anybody who has done maybe even therapy, counseling, or coaching. There's usually an intake form. There's usually questions that you have to answer, etc. And so as he's filled out his form, he's ready to go. She gets the intake form, and there are some questions that are, you know, I guess the best word I can say is maybe triggersome for her, or bringing out some fears in her. And so she talks to him and says, I'm, first of all, it's new to her, right? So she says, I'm new to all of this. I do have some, I'm hesitant. I do have some resistance toward this because these questions, some of them are based on like childhood things that have happened in the past. And she said, I don't know if I am truly ready, right, to kind of expose myself in this way. I want to get to that point, but I don't know if I can do that now, right? And so he's telling his friends about the scenario, and he's kind of torn, right? Because he says, there's a part of him that's like, I'm presenting this to her because I feel like I've, I don't want to say facilitated, but we've grown to a certain point in the relationship, and I want to elevate it, but I want to make sure I have the proper foundation if this is the person that I feel like I'm going to marry and spend the rest of my life with. And so there's a part of me that feels like, okay, for her not wanting to have the willingness to really go 100% in doing this coaching with me, and at least having an open heart to expose, what is necessary to be exposed, especially if there's fear there, to be able to love me, and not just me, but just show up in her fullest self, is kind of making me feel like I should pause, but then the other part of me is saying, like, maybe I don't want to force it. Maybe I should just take a step back and not rush it. And maybe this is an opportunity where I can kind of give her space to see where she lands, So he's telling his friend. One friend agrees with his first, right, perspective on this, and says, you know what? The love and fear can't exist in the same space, right? And she explains it. The friend that he's talking to explains it in this way, that it's okay, not when we sense danger, right? And yes, fear can be there, and it can send us a signal to flight or fight. But when it comes to certain areas, if that fear is crippling, if fear is the master and the Lord over that area, then love has no space to come in, right? And so doing something new brings about uncertainty, brings about fear. But for many of us, which I'm sure many of you guys on tonight know, that we have to do it sometimes fearful, and scared, and do it anyway and jump in, because it's necessary to go through that process, and you can't negate it, and you can't escape it. And so that friend tells him, I think the first perspective that you have explained to us is the right one, that, she should come into the space. She can express to you, definitely, that this is bringing about certain fears and things in her, but to want to try to, I guess, manipulate the way, you go about doing the coaching, to say, I can do it, but I don't necessarily want to expose this and that. And the third is automatically her coming in with a closed off or guard, which would work against the whole thing that you're trying to facilitate, right? So that's friend number one. But friend number two says, no, I think your second perspective is right. Like, give her a chance. Don't, force it or rush it. Um, give it some time. So let me know um, what your thoughts on. Do you agree with friend his perspective number one that friend one agrees with, or do you agree with perspective number two that he has friend number two? And what are your thoughts? And if you were in that situation, the great part about these scenarios is that we don't have to be in the situation, right? Where there's no emotional pull or tug at our hearts, right? So we can come completely out of it and, assess and learn from it through their scenario. So what are your thoughts? Do you think that, he's right in that it shouldn't be automatically things that are put out to say, okay, well, no, I'm not willing to talk about this or that, you know, does that, would that be counterproductive for the thing that they're trying, going into the coaching? Or do you agree with friend number two that says, oh, it's okay, give it some time, allow for her to put on whatever restriction she has to go into the sessions, you know. So what do you think? Well, what are your thoughts? Let me know. Let me know. And definitely if you have any thoughts in regards to the quote that I put out tonight. And definitely if you have any questions that you'd like to share or statements that you've heard from others that helped you navigate your relationships or your life in a better way, you know. So that's what we're talking about tonight, folks. So anyone new, again, welcome, first of all. And I'm happy I'm on. I can't believe I'm on TikTok right now. I'm happy this is my first time on with you guys. So I'm appreciative for everyone who's taking a moment and stopping by. Again, my name is Charlotte Coyne. I'm a relationship coach as well as an artist and an author. And this is my show, Forever Friends Academy, where we talk about all relationship topics. My main aim is to help you, as I like to call it, weed out all the lazy loving, because we can become lazy lovers, first and foremost, to ourselves, and then of course, you know, to those around us, right? And so my aim is to help people and present fundamental principles that help people love to their fullest capacity. And then that love and that truth overflows to the relationships that they engage with. So that's my aim. And my aim is to help people build relationships that last a lifetime, because I feel like I think it's more than a feeling. In this culture scape right now, it is a lot of narratives around, how hard it is to have a loving relationship or a relationship that lasts a lifetime, and even certain narratives that are put out that make people sometimes second guess, is it even worth it, and if it's even possible. So that's what I aim to do. So hopefully you hear something tonight that encourages you, inspires you, as far as what would, as far as my credentials for someone who might be coming on for the first time. Well, my most essential and primary one is I've met my husband in high school. I've known him since I was like 13. We didn't start our forever friendship, hence the name of the show, until we were 17. And we've been married for 19 plus years. And I can honestly tell you that every year has been better than the year before. I can tell you we've went through life storms just like anybody else, but putting God at the center, at the core of the relationship, putting our egos, our own selfishness aside, all of the things, putting those things aside to say we'll have love be the strongest voice in our relationship. We'll have God's truth be the strongest voice in our relationship has made all the difference. So that's number one, and that's really the only reason why I started doing this. As far as it's not my educational background, even though I do have my BA in communication studies. I also have a certificate in project management, which I think is very useful um, for translating some of the principles and fundamentals of building successful projects brick by brick. Is I use a lot of it and I translate it into the relationship space because fundamental principles are fundamental principles. So wherever you throw them, they can apply. And if you're going to build a relationship that has a strong foundation, you don't want to play Russian roulette with your life. You want to have principles that are tried and true, that, yeah, that that you can kind of anchor yourself in and know that when the blows of life and the winds of life toss to and fro, you will still be anchored securely. So that is some of my credentials, and I've coached marriages that were on the verge of divorce. I've coached people who are just getting to know each other, or in a scenario like I presented tonight, to try to figure out if this person will be a good fit. Along the way, even though the primary approach of my coaching is towards building relationships, because I do present fundamental principles, I've been able to help people start businesses, really get at a deeper depth and deeper version of their true self, right? So I guess because relationships are the heartbeat of everything we do here, the principles that I apply can be put in any of those relationships, whether it's relationship with yourself, relationship with God, relationship, with familiar relationships, coworkers, etc. So that's a little bit about the background. But let me know what your thoughts are. What I will, while I'm waiting, to see if I have any thoughts on the scenario that I put out today, I would let you know what my thoughts are on it. I think there is, and I'll do it in this way. I'll throw out another statement I threw out a question, so I'll throw out a statement this time for a statement that changed my life when I heard it. And let me know if anybody has heard this statement before. And the statement is, how you do anything is how you do everything. How you do anything is how you do everything. And boy, do I love that statement, but I hate it all at the same time. It's a love-hate relationship. No, I don't want to say hate. Hate is such a strong term. But love and dislike it all at the same time, because while it affords me to approach everything that I do from the most micro to macro, right, or very important decisions, having to keep the same type of kind of heart posture and prudence, and have careful thoughts in what I'm doing helps me to be a high performer when it comes to the things that I'm trying to do. Because I won't say, oh, this is this over here, so, and this is small, so I don't have to really be aware or assess it, or, it won't matter as much. It helps you become a high performer, and it just, the dislike part of it is just when it's called to my remembrance and I'm like, oh man, how I do everything. How I do anything is how I do everything, So it's constantly bringing me back to self-awareness in that way. And so I bring up that statement in regards to the scenario I put out to you guys tonight, because I think if you have two people in a scenario where one person is wanting to intentionally elevate the relationship in the direction of marriage, in the direction of knowing, and I guess taking in consciously the weighted decision, right? To say, I am going to, you know, spend the rest of my life with this person. And I would rather not vow at all, if I'm going to now go into this and then say, if this happens, this and the third, I can just kind of walk away. So the gentleman in the situation, assessing the relationship and saying that, okay, I feel like we've come to a certain point, which is great, right? By ourselves, we've been able to get to a space of vulnerability, get to a space of understanding, get to a space of proper communication. But for us to elevate it further, especially being aware of past relationships and past things that where I navigated the relationship and it did not give me the most optimal experience, that I want someone who I can trust to come in to help assess our relationship so that we can make this next jump in the most advantageous way. I think is a great, there's so many, as they say, green flag signs when somebody is doing that, because there are a lot of people who are kind of staunch and they're just like, no, there's no willingness, right, to grow. So number one, just him having that type of positioning, it says a lot, right? And so if the woman in the scenario is being triggered because there are certain questions that, as she is looking at the intake form to go into the coaching, and it's bringing about fear, and she expresses to him and had, you know, her resistance and everything like that, the expression is fine. However, when you do something, you want to put 100% in. You know, it's like, don't, you know, don't go into something if you feel like you can't put your 100% in, especially, definitely, if it's in the relationship space, right? Because I wrote a book, I wrote two books, but my second book is titled Seven Stages of Loving Relationships. And I wrote in a chapter, there's seven like developmental stages that a relationship goes through. And there's a chapter on growth in the book. And I remember writing in the book that for me, one of the ways that I had to grow, and mind you, my husband and I, again, I knew him since I was like a teenager, right? And we took, you know, because we were in high school, and then we went to college, and so we took time, you know, before we got married, because we had to kind of like make our way through life. We had to grow into, he had to see me grow into womanhood, I had to see him grow into manhood. We were going to school and things like that. So, you know, I had to set things up. So nonetheless, it took about 7 years until we were married. And I remember writing in the book that I was showing, I have a daughter, an oldest daughter named Aaliyah, and I was showing her our wedding video, and she was like, "Mommy, why do you look like a deer in headlights? Like you're only marrying daddy. Like you knew him for like how many years now? Like, why do you look so, you know?" And I told her, I said, because, you know, I knew he is who he is, right? I can look at him in all of the different spaces that he exists, with his families, with his friends. Like, my husband's the type of man that if you talk to any of the people in his circle, they're going to repeat like the similar things, the same things, because he's just that consistent. So I had no doubt in my mind who I was marrying, right? That was set in stone. It was the fact of, oh my gosh, like, I'm about to enter this process and he's gonna have to see the good, the bad, the ugly. And I know he's up for it, but it's okay, what is that gonna do to me though? Can I go through whatever processes that I'm gonna have to go through to become a wife, to become a mother? And how am I going to deal, with those internal, processes, and if there are struggles that come about, because there are certain things that I am going to have to grow into, certain things that I'm going to have to face, things that I'm going to have to learn about myself that, I wouldn't be able to learn about myself separate of him, right? Your partner, your spouse becomes a mirror to you constantly. And that's the whole point. That's the beautiful part of the journey. Two is better than one, right? Like I always use this example for people because I think it's just a clear and direct example when you're putting pieces of a puzzle together. Do you see the picture of the puzzle when the pieces are separate, or do you see them, right? Do you see the whole, or the construction of the whole vision of the full puzzle better when those two pieces that do fit, by the way, let's say that, right? Those two pieces that do fit together, you see the picture greater, right? And so that's the truth of what I was entering. And I knew the weightedness of that. So that's what I thought about. And I also told her I also had to grow in to know what the sacredness of marriage is. I knew Ben, I know me, myself to a certain degree, right? Because you still have to step into the position of being a wife and a mother. And, I love and I have respect because we have so many different people who are talking about relationships right now. And a lot of them, are not married, and I believe you can learn from everyone. But anyone will tell you, like, I can explain to another woman what I, you know, think, you know, it would be like to have a baby or something like that. But until you, and any mothers on here will let you know, go through the process, that's a whole other thing, right? And even with that, right, everyone's different. But the point is, it's different when you're in the scenario and you are now having day by day, right, to show up, choose that person every single day, choose love, choose truth, choose peace over your ego, choose, the truth over your selfishness. Learn how to appropriate your emotions and things like that so that we can continuously provide the best experiences for each other. So that was one thing that I had to kind of understand to be able to go into that position of being a wife. It's like, okay, he's a good person. I believe I'm a good person. Or at least we both open, right? Because all goodness comes from God. So we're both open to let God's goodness flow through us. But what, like marriage, the sacredness of it, what's the necessity of it? What's like, what? For me to really say, I'm going to wholeheartedly dive into this. And I stated in my book, I thankfully, God, nurtured and cultivated my heart enough to know that on that day of our wedding, I wasn't just making a vow to Ben. I wasn't just committing to him, but our whole families were merging together, right? And this one moment, this one decision that I'm going to make is going to have a rippling effect to not just affect our life, but our future children, other family members, dynamics. I mean, that one decision in one moment in time is going to have a rippling effect on so many other things. So yeah, you know, there's a lot of weight that comes with that when you really have that type of holistic understanding around it. So I say all that to say that in that scenario, the woman is fine, should be able to express her fears and things like that, but we cannot have fear be the governing, right, source of how we're navigating, how we're approaching to enter something, definitely not enter a relationship, not entering definitely a process like coaching, which is going to bring about some type of fear to someone who, right, it's new to and it's uncertain. But not only is it new and uncertain, it is also literally a person intentionally saying, I am going to look at this. Like it's different if someone says, yeah, I've been working on me, I've been working, taking my time, you know, getting my own little kind of alone space to work on me. And I always tell clients that come to me or just people who, have conversations with me when it comes to a relationship. I'm like, that's great. And I think that's wonderful work, right? We're talking about how do you prepare for a relationship? How do you stay ready? So you don't have to get ready. That's one of the things, right? Just saying, okay, I want to I want to make sure that I am alert and I am aware. I have self-awareness about myself. I have a saying that I say on my show as well as to my clients that you want to marry someone who is going to be a worthy adversary against the vices that wish to hold you captive. And let me say it again because it's a little very poetic in some ways, which I can be. So I'll say it again so it lands. Um, you want to marry someone who is a worthy adversary against the vices that wish to hold you captive. It just means, man, our negative behaviorisms, right? Our blind spots that we can't see. That person will be able to bring that to us, or enlighten us in a way. And it doesn't mean that that person does it in a way where they're constantly always vocalizing to you. A lot of things that I had to work out and vices that I had, a lot of it was worked out and inspired by the demonstration of my husband or the modeling that he did in the relationship, right? So it's not like that person has to be all the time saying something to you, but that can be done in many different ways. I always like to say communication is not just a vocal thing. Communication is always happening in life, definitely always happening in relationships. And so if we pay attention to those other areas, then we will put ourselves in a position to get, different messages and not miss so many messages when we focus on being aware in totality of all the mediums that communication can come in. So that's the person that you want to marry, right? But it's like, how do you know that you're a person that, you know, is a good fit, meaning that you are someone who can be an adversary, or a formidable opponent to the vices that are in someone without being fearless of putting that flashlight or that light of God's love to your own heart, or to examine your own mind, or to examine your own life practices to know, right, where, you know, the pitfalls are or where your strengths are, right, to see of how, I say all the time on my shows that, we live in a world where everybody's looking for the person who's they're compatible with and things like that. But honestly, relationships are complementary. It's not meant to have two people who are the same. Now, don't get me wrong. Yes, core values and beliefs and things like that. You want someone who can be open to say, okay, these are the fundamental truths, and no matter how I feel, I will submit to what this truth is. So for example, in this scenario, you have two, people in this imaginary scenario that I gave you guys where the man is like, listen, I'm ready to get married. I want to see if we can take this to the next level, but I know, he's saying, I know my strength. I've taken us, or I feel like we've grown to a certain space as far as we can go. But now I want to get extra help for us so that we can make sure that this foundation that we're setting for this relationship is a strong foundation, right? So there's assessment in that, there's awareness, there is intentionality, there's a lot of good things going on. Whereas if in that is him putting that towards her is actually bringing out, right, some fears that were hidden there, right? And I always say, to the people that I speak to, it's a different thing when you say something versus you write it, right? Like the we can say, we can be flippant, right, with our mouth at times. So we can say a lot of things and just come off. I don't know if you've ever been a person who said something you regret it, and it's like, oh, I didn't mean it to come out that way, et cetera, right? Versus when you write something down, it's like you have to really, there's a different level of thought process which sometimes that's why it can be hurtful, when somebody writes something down, and especially in this age of social media where they're like, people just write all kind of things, under people comments and things like that, where it's like, man, you thought that, and then you, you really wrote that, or text that, or however, but for her to see the intake and see the questions in this particular scenario that are bringing about certain areas that clearly need to be dealt with, is actually a good thing. It's actually a good thing, right? So I made a statement: love and fear cannot coexist in the same space. I am not saying, when I say that, let me tell you what I'm not saying. I'm not saying that we as human beings who are filled with love, made from love, cannot have moments where we're sensing and discerning danger that makes us want to flight. Lets us know, indicate, okay, you need to either flee, take flight, or fight, right, to survive whatever dangerous scenario you're in. Or you can be in a scenario where uncertainty is coming your way and you feel fear because this is something that is new. This is something that is unknown. This is something that is unfamiliar. This is something that is probably going to expose you in a certain way, right? And so it's important for us to, right, and another thing that I stated in my book, 7 Stages of Love and Relationships, I say 100% of relationships fail because people have a misunderstanding of what love is. And that misunderstanding oftentimes gets constructed by the life experiences that we have, and we will filter love through the life experience rather than filtering your life experience through the light of love, right? Because then you can appropriate it, but oftentimes it's not what we do, right? The experience brings about a certain emotion, a certain feeling to it, and it becomes inscribed on our soul, and then we allow that to kind of misconstrue what love is, and so in this particular scenario that I presented to you guys tonight, if she can assess that the fear is because it is, now you are stepping into allowing yourself to be probed, not just by yourself, by the person that you are trying to grow in a space to possibly and potentially grow and have a lifetime of love forever with, as well as now someone else who has been skilled to be able to guide the process, right? And further assist in seeing maybe blind spots that both of, right, the individuals in the relationship aren't seeing, just because maybe their lack of experience, or maybe they just, haven't been trained in that way. Either way, it can only do good for the relationship if they do that. And so I would definitely say that the friend one that I told you guys about in this scenario, aligning with the perspective that he had in the beginning, of saying, man, I want her to be able to do this 100%, not haphazardly, right? Like, this is not something we can do and not go all the way in, so I would definitely say that that's something that you would want the person not to automatically come with the doors that they want to close, or what they're already starting to say they are resistant to do or resistant to expose. Because how do you want to love me, or do you want to fear me? Because if there are, questions that you see on, in this particular example, an intake form, because they're, doing or approaching to do coaching together, and these questions are bringing about fear inside of you, and we know that this fear is because of the exposure that will happen, that must happen, to be able to grow in the relationship, and beyond, aside from the relationship with that gentleman, really just within her, right? It's necessary. It's like there's no way to cross a bridge but to cross it, you know. Now, I definitely would tell someone in this scenario, which is another thing that I put out in my book, Seven Stages of Love and Relationships, is that, you know, vulnerability is a scary thing for a lot of people. And I think it's because when we think of vulnerability, we automatically think about what we're going to have to say or what we're going to have to tell. Like, do I have to tell you, you know, every person I met, this happened to me at 3, this happened to me at 4, this happened to me at 5? No, that's not what vulnerability is. You know, I write in my book that vulnerability is to God first, because the process is you're allowing God to, you know, inspect your heart space, inspect your soul. You know, you're allowing God to do all of these things, so that you can become more aware of yourself. And one of my favorite quotes in the book is that I say that vulnerability is allowing the light of God to come in, and, you know, basically that light, when it inspects all of the corridors of your heart, the shadows that will disperse, and you will be left standing in the true light of who you are, right? Because the shadows for many of us can be whatever things that we have doubt, you know, shame or judgment about certain experiences and things that we've lived through, things that we've done. You are not your experiences, you know. So there's no way to kind of get to that discovery process without that happening, you know. And so I say it's to God first, you second, right? And then third, the person, because they get the reward of you coming up and showing and being your pure, authentic self, right? Which is hard for a lot of people to do. So it might be, or it might seem like, as they say, a trope, or you know, things you hear people say all the time. They say it all the time because there's a reality, right, of how difficult that can be, in life for many people. And you know, so, oh, I love it. I got something. I'm sorry. I hope I'm not missing. Please forgive me, TikTok. I'm so serious. This is my first time doing it. So bear with me. But I have a statement. Oh, it's no wonder. Hey, how you doing? He said inspection for reflection for detection. Yeah, I like that. And you know he a writer. All the shuns. Inspection for reflection for detection. I love it. Hey, Justin, how are you? So that's my little 2 cents on the scenario. And let me tell you, ladies, if you find yourself in a scenario with a gentleman, okay, who, like I said, in this particular scenario that I put out tonight, says to you that I want to do coaching, you know, sometimes I usually hear the opposite, where, you know, maybe the wife or the, you know, girlfriend wants to do it, and, you know, there's resistance on the other end. So if you find yourself in a scenario where the guy is like, no, you know, I want us to elevate this relationship to the next level, and I feel, you know, when I examine my past experiences in relationships, that I know that, you know, there are certain things that I wish that I did well, and there are certain failure paths that I don't want to go down again, and they want to now, the both of you, to come to another person who can help you. Listen, you express that fear that you have to them, but you have a willingness and a willing heart, because at the end of the day, if you can kind of take, you know, step aside from the emotion, because emotions, I always say, right, they're fleeting. They're meant to come and go. That's why we have so many emotions throughout the day. You know, for some people, most people, you can laugh at something, you get mad, another thing, you know, maybe cry at another thing. It's, you know, I like to say it's your spirit taking a field trip, you know, saying, wow, I could feel all these things, you know, because your spirit is like eternal, right? So that's the beautiful part about this life. We go through, you know, things that are disappointing, things that make us angry. And listen, it's not an eternal state. That's the beautiful part about it, right? Like, tomorrow is a blank new canvas, is a blank new day where you can approach things in a different way. So that's the beautiful part about emotions, along with the fact that emotions are I like to call them like delivery men and delivery women, whatever you want to put. Delivery service, right? They're indicators. They are not meant to be judgments. And I think our emotions start to master us if we take them on as judgments instead of indicators. Definitely, if you find yourself in that scenario, I would say move, move through it, even with the fear that you're feeling, because some things that we have to do in life, the fear might not go away. It almost becomes kind of a facilitator to kind of help us cross that bridge, especially if it is a scenario like the one that I presented tonight, where, okay, this fear is coming about because, you know, I'm intentionally going into a space and an experience that is going to require a deeper level of vulnerability from me to go through it. So it's uncertain, and uncertainty will bring about fear for many people, unless you're like a risk taker, which, you know, there might be certain people who are like that, where it's like, okay, yeah, no, I signed up for this, which is great. There's some people who are like that, but even that person, I'm sure there's something in life that is even a greater risk than they might have signed up for, that maybe there might be fear that comes there. But as they say, do it afraid, and in that scenario, they can, she can jump out of herself and say, at the end of the day, what he's asking of me, is it going to make the relationship better? Is it going to make me understand myself better, what we're in better? Is it going to give us a better advantage of navigating, our relationship to a higher level? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So definitely, I would say go for it. Hey, Ajax. I'm sorry. I'm on TikTok, so when this thing is, I don't know, it's doing something, y'all. I don't really, I'm sorry, Ajax. I'm on TikTok tonight, and it's doing something. I don't know exactly what it's doing, but I'm trying to fix it. Anyway, hey, hey, Jack. Yeah, you ready? I'm so I was just about to get off, hey, Jack, but you know what? Because you came on, I'm gonna run it down. I'm gonna run down what we were talking about today, just for you. The quote that I introduced was from Dr. Miles Monroe, and it's actually a continuation of the conversation that we had, that I had on my last podcast. And it is, God blesses your plans, not your desires. God blesses your plans, not your desires. And he also said, having a plan and executing it is the highest expression of your faith. So I started tonight's conversation with that, and then I asked people, I told them first why I wanted to present it in regards to the area of relationships, is that sometimes many of us desire to be right in, especially romantic, intimate relationships. We love, that's a natural thing. Human beings desire connection. So we love to have in-depth connection with people. And because it's such a strong, desirable force in our existence, oftentimes we can misconstrue having a desire for having a plan. And so the question that I asked the folks on tonight was, how do you stay ready, right? That quote, stay ready so you have to get ready to be in a relationship. How do you stay ready? How do you prepare to be in a relationship? How do you stay ready? What would you tell someone? So that is the question that I posed tonight. And when you came in, I also gave them a scenario of a couple where you have the gentleman in the relationship. They've been kind of like grown with each other, seeing if there was a potential match there that could lead into marriage for about a year. And he felt like, okay, we are in a certain space, we are in a certain space now, and I think we've developed our relationship to a certain point, but I want to, if I'm thinking about elevating this relationship towards marriage, I want to make sure that we're laying the strongest foundation possible for us. And when he tells her this, they, if anybody's done therapy or coaching, they get their intake form. There are questions that sometimes you have to answer. And so as she's looking at the intake form, it's triggering things to her, right? Because they might ask questions like certain things that might have happened in your childhood and things like that. And so these things are bringing about fear in her. And so she expresses that to him, and she says, I think I want to do this. I'm not sure. But if I do it, I think there are certain things that I don't want to answer. I don't want to. I don't know, if I'm ready to kind of like, face these things. And he tells his friends, and he tells his friends basically his reaction or response to her saying that to him. And his first response and reaction, not that he reacted towards her, was, it's kind of bringing me a pause because here I am. I want us to grow together, and she's already putting kind of guardrails on how we can approach doing this coaching. And if she's not going to do it like 100%, I don't see how it's going to even be productive or be as beneficial as it can be. And then he said the other side is like, okay, maybe maybe I don't force it, maybe I don't rush it, and I kind of allow her to put these restrictions on it, and then we do it anyway, and it maybe not affect it. So I asked the people on tonight, which one do they agree with? Do they? His first friend agrees with his first perspective, and and says like, love and fear can't exist in the same space, and she has to go. She should be able to go in, especially with the environment of what you guys are going in and the whole kind of point of it, that she it's not advantageous for her to go in it automatically resisting the help that you are trying to attain to serve the betterment of the relationship, right? And his second friend says, no, I agree with the second perspective. Like, don't force it. Take some time, allow her to put these kind of restrictions, and, maybe along the way, she'll open up. So that's what, hopefully, I've been on for a while, but in a nutshell, that's what I've been talking about. So let me read some of your stuff because you have taken out so much time to type. Ajax says, how to prepare to be in a relationship is to make sure that you are fully ready for what comes with being in a relationship, not just financially, but spiritually, mentally, and overall. That's what I would tell someone, and just make sure you don't give up or walk away when things get hard or get tough, because they will. Relationships will definitely test you. Not the good days, but the bad days, the lows and the highs. That's when you really know if the relationship will last or not. Thank you, Ajax. Yeah, and I think that's what people hear, right? Not just financially, but spiritually and mentally. Be mentally prepared. Be financially. I think financial is more easier, right, for people to kind of get a hold of. Like most people, maybe they might have a number in their mind. Like, okay, once I get to this number, I know I'm good. Which is not true, right? Because listen, any married person will tell you, stock market go up and down, economy swings, things like that. So there's nothing that's you like set in stone. But yes, you can plan to have a certain amount. But at the same time, plan to be adaptable, plan to be resilient, because whatever changes occur, you have to be able to, navigate those changes and still grow together. But I think the other areas is a little bit, harder for people, when you say spiritually and be mentally prepared and be emotionally prepared. Like, what does that look like? There's like and I mean, right, there's nothing that's really formulaic, about relationships. Even when I present fundamental principles, I don't think they're formulaic. I think they're just things that are just, God's principles are pervasive, and they are true no matter the ebbs and flows of life and seasons of life and generations of what we're in. So they're worth knowing and learning about to anchor yourself in. But at the same time, those principles are what they are, but there's no formula that you can put them in and say it's going to guarantee I get the same kind of result or same type of experience. Life is just not formulaic in that way. But I definitely will say that things that I can think of that Ben and I have done, is like you dream together. That can be explained in the way that I share with him what my aspirations are. I share with him what my passions are, and he does the same thing. So we start there, like dreaming together, and maybe share with him some of the things that I think that are prohibiting me to get to the next stage or next level or elevated version, to optimize those things that I wish to do or be the best in, right? We share those things. So that's a part of doing the dreaming together work. And then after you dream together, I think you should definitely pray together, right? There's a Bible verse that I always love. And let me get my phone because, wait, no, let me look it up for you guys because I hate, I strongly dislike, I've been using hate a lot today and I don't like that. I strongly dislike when I say Bible verses the wrong way, even if you guys get me. I'm going to look it up real quick so I can say it right to you. Okay. do, 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 do. Do, do, do. Right? So it's Psalm 37:4, and it says, "Delight thyself also in the Lord, and he shall give thee the desires of thine heart." Right? And so that's why I say after you dream together, pray together, because sometimes, just like what we were talking about tonight, right? How people can misinterpret a desire for a plan, right? And oftentimes, sometimes the desire too, we can have desires that aren't always the best for us, or maybe we can desire something that we're not prepared for, right? It's just not the right timing and things like there's so many factors, so many different things that could come into play, right? And so I love that verse because it starts with delight in the Lord, right? And oftentimes, and I did an episode, many moons, like maybe 2 or 3 years ago, where I talked about how, you know, I think a desire is a strong tool of the enemy, the devil in our lives, or what can be utilized to hold us captive in certain negative and cyclical behaviorisms that don't serve us. Because when we start to desire so strongly that it starts to, because desire is usually a pleasurable thing, right? But you can get into a point where you're desiring something and it feels so far away from you. It feels so distant that now it's not pleasurable. It becomes like this painstaking ache, and it actually is like counterproductive to where now that very thing that you desire you don't get because you have now unaware, to yourself, you've put yourself in a position of this kind of like wantingness. When the desires that we have, they come about because of the things that have already been placed inside of us that we delight in. I think as children, we have that. We delight, we play, we do things for exploration and fun. And, we become adults and that changes, unfortunately, and now the desires become result, outcome driven and things like that. And so it distorts it. And so that's why I love that verse, because it puts things in the proper order. It's like, okay, I'm delighting in this. And then he gives me the desires of my own heart because it's coming from, a fountain of, okay, this is something I desire because it's already been put inside of me. Like I'm desiring this because I've been equipped, I've been skilled. I know this is a part of the destiny, the pathway. in my life. And so it different. It's a different experience. The desire becomes a different experience for that person. So I think, praying after you do the dreaming together is giving space for God to kind of like, you know, tear out the desires that aren't necessarily, beneficial, or maybe come from a space of kind of like lack or poverty, where he can kind of appropriate it, and it's like, okay, yeah, this desire is good. You're gonna be like a water flow. You're gonna be overflowing with this thing. It's not like I'm desiring this thing that's so outside of myself in that way, right? So dream together, pray together, and then third, plan together, right? Plan, because once we've dreamed, we've been able to assess our skills and things like that, and our vices and strengths and all that, and we can now allow God, pray together. So allow God's spirit, he can breathe life into it, and inspiration and energy to fuel the things that you want to do. Then you can plan, because then you'll plan in the right way, right? And in that plan to prepare to get ready for what it is that you're going to get into. Plan to prepare a relationship that lasts forever, and the type of relationship that is holistic in every area of your life. Ajax says, let me move back because I think I missed some lines. I missed some things, y'all, as I was talking. Okay, he says, a lot of people, for sure. You also have to love yourself and care about yourself before you can love and care about someone else. You sure right. Yes, you are right. Definitely pray together and read the Bible together. Pray before you get into a relationship. I agree with you, Charlotte. You make a lot of great points. You know what? Ajax be on my side, okay? I be having Ajax in my head. Like, if I go to sleep, I'm like, you know what? Ajax said, you doing all right, Charlotte. I won't quit because of that. I'm playing when I'm not playing. I'm so for real. Ajax and all the other people who come, let me know how something, I said in doing these episodes have impacted them or gave them something that they could apply. So I appreciate you, Ajax. I'm so glad I didn't come off, because then I would have missed you. So thank you. Thank you. And thank you. I got to go back on TikTok because I don't know what happened. Yeah, it was my first day though, guys. I'm so happy because I always post things to TikTok, but I never go to, I didn't get to go live, and there were so many people. They were like, I think there was like 967 people views. So that's great. But thank you guys for tonight, but definitely have these conversations, with some loved ones, some friends. I think it's so pertinent, it's so good, because people will definitely, we can mistake our desires for a plan, especially when it comes to relationships. We can sure enough do that. It's like, I want you, or I want to be married, that's a desire, but it's not a plan. So what does that look like, right? What does a planning look like in a relationship? And if you want to check out my last video, it was good. That's how we started this conversation. I went down all of my 4 ways that I approach my relationship with men that helps, to kind of, one, not have, which is hard for many of us, right? Appropriate expectations, or not have them at all if you can get to that certain space. Be able to meet needs, as well as what we're talking about now, which is create a space and environment, a relationship where you can, stay ready, so you don't have to get ready and sustain those things that provide for a healthy, thriving relationship time and time again. So check that video out. Hey, Emily, oh my goodness, how are you? I am about to get off. But thank you. Definitely catch the recap. If any body came on, you liked anything that you heard, definitely always go to my Forever Friends Academy page. Subscribe, like, comment, spread the word, so we can, have more content like this out into the world. Thank you for all your time, all your energy, for stopping by, talking to me. Definitely, Ajax, typing all that you talked, all that you not talked. Sorry, I did have the link, but no one came on and called. Someday it's gonna happen. I try to make it easier for you guys so you don't have to type. But anyhow, oh, that's right, Emily. Congratulations. Emily was just in a musical, Mamma Mia. She did so good. I didn't see the whole play, or musical. I just saw the preview. She did so good. So congratulations, love. That is awesome. Thank you for popping on with me after all that. I figure you'd be zonked. Like, yeah, I need to go to sleep. I just worked my little behind off. But thank you for coming in. And thank everyone. I will definitely, hopefully, God willing, be on next Thursday with you guys with a new topic. And I'm glad I was able to kind of get back into the scenarios. We used to do the scenario Sundays all the time. So I'm glad I was able to get a scenario out to you guys tonight. Appreciate it. All right. But love you guys as usual. And always remember to live to love freely. Until next time. Bye-bye. See you later.